The morning sun cast long shadows across downtown Chicago, painting the glass towers in shades of amber and gold. Marcus Webb adjusted his tie in the reflection of the revolving door, checking his Rolex for the third time in as many minutes. 8:45. He was already running late for the board meeting that would determine whether his hedge fund would survive the quarter. The Starbucks on Michigan Avenue was packed, as it always was at this hour. Businessmen in tailored suits, young professionals clutching laptops, tourists taking photos of the bean visible through the window. The lines snaked nearly to the door. Marcus didn't have time for lines. He never did. He pushed past a woman with a stroller, ignoring her startled gasp. A college kid with headphones barely registered as Marcus shouldered him aside. The entitled smirk on his face said everything about the kind of man he was. 52 years old, CEO of Webb Capital Management, and worth more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. At least that's what the world believed. The truth was far more complicated. 3 months ago, Marcus had made a catastrophic bet on emerging market currencies, the kind of bet that looked brilliant on paper but had gone spectacularly wrong when a political crisis in Southeast Asia sent everything into freefall. $62 million gone, just like that. His investors were circling like sharks who had smelled blood in the water. His board was demanding answers he didn't have, and his carefully constructed empire was crumbling around him like a sandcastle at high tide. But Marcus Webb didn't show weakness, ever. That was the first rule his father had taught him, back when he was just a kid growing up in a cramped apartment on the South Side. Never let them see you sweat. Never let them know you're afraid. Because the moment they smell fear, they'll tear you apart. So Marcus walked into that Starbucks with his head held high and his jaw set, ready to take what he wanted, because that's what powerful men did. "Excuse me," said a deep, calm voice, as Marcus nearly collided with a man standing near the pickup counter. "Lines back there." Marcus didn't even look at him. "I don't do lines." He pushed forward to the counter, slapping his platinum card down with practiced authority. "Grande Americano, extra hot, now!" The barista, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair and a nose ring, looked at him with barely concealed disdain. "Sir, there are people waiting." "Do I look like I care?" Marcus snapped. "Do you know who I am?" "I could buy this entire franchise with my pocket change. Now make my drink." The store had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. The man Marcus had brushed past stood motionless by the pickup counter, his hands loose at his sides. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. His clothes were unremarkable. Jeans, work boots, a flannel shirt rolled up to reveal forearms covered in faded scars. His hair was cropped short, military style, and his eyes were the kind of pale blue that seemed to look right through you. His name was Daniel Cole, and 24 hours ago he'd buried his wife. Sarah had been everything to him, his anchor, his compass, his reason for getting up in the morning. They had met 18 years ago, when Daniel was fresh out of the Navy and struggling to adjust to civilian life. She had been working the night shift at a coffee shop near the VA hospital, and she had seen something in him that he couldn't see in himself. She had saved his life, not in the dramatic Hollywood way, but in the quiet, everyday way that actually mattered. She had listened when he needed to talk, and stayed silent when he needed peace. She had held him through the nightmares and celebrated the small victories. She had loved him completely, unconditionally, in a way he had never thought himself worthy of. And now she was gone. The cancer had been aggressive, pancreatic. By the time they caught it, there was nothing anyone could do. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. 6 months of watching the woman he loved fade away, piece by piece, until all that was left was a shell in a hospital bed and a hand that grew colder every day. Daniel had come to this Starbucks because it was Sarah's favorite. She used to drag him here every Sunday morning, insisting that he try whatever seasonal drink they were promoting. He had pretended to complain, but secretly he had loved those mornings. The warmth of her laugh, the way she would steal the foam from his cup, the simple joy of being alive together. Now he stood in this same coffee shop surrounded by people who had no idea what he was carrying, and he wondered if he would ever feel that kind of joy again. The barista looked like she wanted to cry. Her manager, a heavy-set man with a receding hairline, hurried over with a placating smile. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience. We'll have your drink ready right away." "Finally," Marcus muttered. "Someone with half a brain." Daniel Cole said nothing. He just watched. 3 minutes later, Marcus snatched his cup from the counter without a word of thanks. He was already typing on his phone, composing an angry email to his CFO, when he turned and walked directly into Daniel Cole. The collision was inevitable. The cup crumpled. 200 degrees of liquid fury exploded outward, except it didn't hit Marcus. The coffee splashed across Daniel's chest, soaking through his flannel shirt, steam rising from the fabric. The smell of burnt cloth and skin filled the air. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus laughed. "Watch where you're going, you pathetic lowlife," he sneered. "Look at you. You probably can't even afford to dry clean that ridiculous outfit. People like you shouldn't even be allowed in places like this." Daniel Cole looked down at his chest. The skin beneath the wet fabric was already turning red. Second-degree burns, at minimum. He'd felt worse, much worse, in places that didn't have Starbucks or men in expensive suits or any semblance of civilization. He remembered a night in Afghanistan, pinned down behind a rock wall while bullets tore through the air around him. He remembered the searing pain of shrapnel tearing through his thigh, the smell of blood and cordite, the screams of his wounded brothers. He had pushed through that. He had survived that. This was nothing. This man was nothing. He looked up at Marcus Webb. "You should apologize," Daniel said quietly. Marcus's face contorted with disbelief. "Apologize? To you? Listen here, you blue-collar nobody. I'm worth more than you'll ever dream of. You're lucky I don't sue you for getting in my way." "I'm going to give you one more chance," Daniel said. His voice hadn't changed, still calm, still controlled. "Apologize. To the barista, to the people you pushed, and to me." Marcus stepped closer, jabbing a finger into Daniel's burned chest. The pain must have been excruciating, but Daniel didn't flinch. "Or what?" Marcus hissed. "What are you going to do? Hit me? Go ahead. I have lawyers who will destroy your entire existence. I'll take everything you own, your trailer, your beat-up truck, whatever pathetic little life you've cobbled together. You're nothing. You're less than nothing." Daniel's hand moved so fast that nobody saw it happen. One moment Marcus was standing there, finger extended, face twisted with contempt. The next, he was on his knees, his arm locked behind his back at an angle that made several onlookers wince. His face was pressed against the tiled floor, and Daniel's knee was resting gently but firmly on his spine. "I spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL," Daniel said, his voice still eerily calm. "I've been shot 3 times. I've lost count of the bones I've broken, yours and mine. I've done things that would make you cry just hearing about them. And right now, I could dislocate your shoulder with about 2 pounds of pressure." Marcus whimpered. The sound was high and thin, nothing like the arrogant bark he'd been using moments before. "Please," he gasped. "Please, I'm sorry. "Not to me," Daniel said. "To them." He nodded toward the barista, who was watching with wide eyes, her hand pressed over her mouth. "I'm sorry," Marcus screamed. "I'm sorry for being rude. I'm sorry for cutting in line. Please, just let me go." Daniel held him there for another 3 seconds. Then smoothly he released the hold and stood up. Marcus scrambled backward on all fours, his tailored suit now smeared with dirt and spilled coffee. His face was pale, his eyes wild with fear. He had never experienced anything like this. In his world, money was power, and power meant never having to face consequences. But this man, this stranger in work boots and flannel, had shattered that illusion in a matter of seconds. "You're insane," Marcus whispered. "You're absolutely insane. I'm calling the police. I'm pressing charges. You're going to prison for the rest of your life." Daniel looked at him with something that might have been pity. "I'm having the worst week of my life," he said quietly. "My wife died 4 days ago. Cancer. I just buried her yesterday. I came here because this was her favorite coffee shop. She used to love the vanilla lattes." The store was silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to have stopped hissing. "I don't want anything from you," Daniel continued. "I don't want your money. I don't want your apology. I just want you to understand something. The way you treat people matters. The things you say, the way you look at them, the assumptions you make, it all matters. Because you never know what someone else is carrying." He turned and walked toward the door. "Wait!" the barista called out. "Sir, wait!" Daniel stopped. "Your coffee," she said, holding out a fresh cup. "Vanilla latte, on the house." Daniel stared at it for a long moment. Then he nodded once and took the cup. "Thank you," he said. Her name was Sarah, and then he was gone. Marcus Webb sat on the floor of that Starbucks for nearly 10 minutes. Nobody helped him up. Nobody offered him a hand. The people who had watched his humiliation simply went about their business, stepping around him as if he were a piece of furniture. When he finally made it to his feet, his phone was buzzing incessantly. The board meeting had started without him. His CFO was sending increasingly frantic messages. The presentation that was supposed to save his company was happening, and he wasn't there. But Marcus didn't move. He stood there, staring at the door through which Daniel Cole had disappeared. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus Webb felt something other than contempt for the world around him. He felt shame. The board meeting was a disaster. Marcus arrived 45 minutes late, his suit stained, his hair disheveled, his carefully constructed mask of authority in tatters. The investors sat around the mahogany table like a jury at an execution, their faces carved from stone. "Webb Capital has experienced a temporary setback," Marcus began, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "But I assure you, with the proper $62 million, interrupted Victor Hadley, the lead investor. He was 70 years old and had been destroying companies since before Marcus was born. That's not a temporary setback, Marcus. That's a catastrophe. The market conditions are what they are for everyone. Yet somehow your competitors are turning profits while you're hemorrhaging cash." Victor leaned forward, his eyes cold. "What happened to you this morning?" Marcus touched his stained suit reflexively. "A minor accident. Nothing important. You look like you've been in a street fight." The words hit closer to home than Victor could have known. Marcus felt the phantom pressure of his arm being twisted behind his back, heard the calm voice of a man who had nothing left to lose. "I'm fine," Marcus said. "Can we focus on the matter at hand?" The meeting continued for another 2 hours. When it was over, Marcus had retained his position by the slimmest of margins, but his authority had been gutted. The board had imposed oversight. His decisions would now require approval. He was a CEO in name only. He sat alone in the conference room after everyone else had left, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The sun was setting now, the same amber light that had welcomed the morning now bidding it farewell. The city stretched out before him, millions of lives in motion, and for the first time Marcus realized how small he actually was in the grand scheme of things. His phone rang. It was his wife, ex-wife, Linda. "What do you want?" he answered. "Nice to talk to you too, Marcus. I heard about the board meeting. Word travels fast. It always does when you're bleeding in the water." There was no sympathy in her voice. They had been divorced for 3 years, and she had taken half of everything. "I'm calling because Ethan's graduation is next month. He wants to know if you're coming." Marcus closed his eyes. Ethan, his son, 22 years old, and about to graduate from Stanford with honors. Marcus had missed the last 4 birthdays, the last 3 Christmases, and countless phone calls that went to voicemail. He had always told himself there would be time later, that once he had built his empire, once he had proven himself, he would be the father Ethan deserved. But later never came. There was always another deal, another crisis, another reason to postpone the things that actually mattered. "I don't know," he said. "Things are complicated right now." "They're always complicated with you, Marcus. That's the problem. Everything is always more important than your own family." "That's not fair, isn't it?" Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you know what Ethan said when I asked him if he wanted you there? He said, and I quote, 'Does it matter? He won't show up anyway.'" The words landed like punches. "I'll be there," Marcus said. "Don't make promises you can't keep. It hurts him more than your absence ever could." She hung up. Marcus sat in the darkness of the empty conference room for a long time. The city lights flickered on below, millions of lives going about their evening routines, completely unaware of the man in the tower who was watching them, and wondering when exactly he had become the villain of his own story. The next morning, Marcus didn't go to the office. He woke up at 5, as he always did, but instead of reaching for his phone and checking the Asian markets, he lay in bed and stared at the ceiling of his penthouse apartment. It was a beautiful ceiling, hand-painted Italian frescoes, imported at tremendous expense. He'd never really looked at it before. At 6, he put on jeans and a plain white t-shirt, clothes he hadn't worn in years. They still fit, barely. At 7, he walked into the same Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. The purple-haired barista was there. She recognized him immediately. Her face went pale. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Marcus said quickly. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. What I did yesterday was inexcusable. The way I spoke to you, the way I treated everyone here. It was wrong." She stared at him, clearly unsure how to respond. "I was wondering," Marcus continued, "if you knew anything about the man, the one I, threw coffee on. The veteran?" "Yes." She shook her head. "He's been coming here for about a week. Always orders a vanilla latte, never talks much. Someone mentioned his wife was sick." "She died," Marcus said quietly. "He buried her the day before I met him." The barista's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. Do you know where I could find him?" "No, I'm sorry. I don't know anything about him." Marcus nodded slowly. "If he comes in again, could you give him something for me?" He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. On the back, he wrote a single sentence. "I'm sorry." "I know it's not much," he said, handing it to her, "but it's a start." He ordered a coffee, a regular coffee, from the back of the line. He waited his turn like everyone else. And when he left, he said, "Thank you." It was a small thing, but it was a beginning. Daniel Cole spent the week after the coffee shop incident doing what he had done every day since Sarah's death, surviving. The house they had shared for 15 years felt cavernous without her. Every room held memories. The kitchen where she had taught herself to make Thai food, burning 3 pans in the process before finally getting it right. The living room where they had watched every episode of their favorite shows together, arguing about plot twists and character motivations. The bedroom where she had taken her last breath, holding his hand and telling him it was okay to let go. He hadn't let go. He wasn't sure he knew how. The visitors had stopped coming after the funeral. The casseroles and sympathy cards had dried up. That was how grief worked, Daniel knew. People meant well, but they had their own lives to live. They couldn't carry your burden forever. Not that Daniel wanted them to. He had never been good at accepting help. 12 years as a SEAL had trained him to rely on himself, to push through pain, to compartmentalize emotion until it could be dealt with in private. But this was different. This wasn't a mission. There was no objective, no timeline, no extraction point. This was just emptiness, stretching out ahead of him like a desert with no horizon. He found himself doing strange things, talking to Sarah's picture on the nightstand, leaving her coffee cup in the dish rack unwashed because washing it would mean acknowledging that she would never use it again. Sleeping on his side of the bed, leaving her side perfectly made, as if she might come home any moment. On the 7th day, he returned to the Starbucks. It was irrational, he knew. Sarah was gone, and sitting in her favorite coffee shop wouldn't bring her back, but something drew him there anyway. Maybe it was the hope that he might feel her presence in a place she had loved. Maybe it was just the need to be around people, even if he didn't talk to them. The purple-haired barista recognized him immediately. "Vanilla latte?" she asked. "Please." She made the drink herself, and when she handed it to him, she also pressed a business card into his palm. "The man from last week," she said. "The one who, he came back. He wanted me to give you this." Daniel looked at the card. Marcus Webb, CEO, Webb Capital Management. On the back, 2 words. "I'm sorry." He stared at it for a long moment. Did he say anything else? Just that he was sorry. He seemed different, quieter. He waited in line like everyone else. Daniel nodded slowly. He tucked the card into his pocket and took his coffee to a table by the window. He sat there for an hour, watching the people walk by, thinking about the strange encounter and the even stranger apology. He thought about Sarah, about the things she used to say. "Everyone is fighting a battle you can't see, Daniel. Even the ones who seem like they have everything." He pulled out the business card and looked at it again. Then he pulled out his phone. Marcus was in his office when the call came. He had been expecting it to be another investor demanding an update, another board member questioning his decisions, another problem that needed solving. He didn't recognize the number. "Marcus Webb," he answered. "This is Daniel Cole. We met at the coffee shop." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. "Mr. Cole, I'm glad you called. I wanted to say, you already did. The barista gave me your card." "Right, yes. I know it's not enough. What I did, what I said, it was unforgivable. I've been thinking about it constantly. I've been thinking about a lot of things, actually." There was a long pause. "Why did you call?" Daniel asked. Marcus let out a breath. "Honestly, I don't know. I think I just wanted the chance to apologize properly, face to face, if you're willing." Another pause. "There's a diner on Clark Street," Daniel finally said. "Murphy's. You know it. I can find it. Tomorrow, noon. I'll be there." Daniel hung up without saying goodbye. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the phone, wondering what exactly he had just agreed to. Murphy's Diner was exactly the kind of place Marcus would have walked past without a second glance under normal circumstances. Cracked vinyl booths, laminated menus with pictures of the food, a jukebox in the corner that hadn't worked since the Reagan administration, the kind of place where regular people ate regular food and didn't worry about Yelp reviews or farm-to-table sourcing. The walls were covered with old photographs, black and white images of Chicago from decades past. The smell of bacon and coffee hung in the air, thick and comforting. A bell above the door jingled as Marcus walked in, and every head in the place turned to look at him. He felt exposed, vulnerable. Without his suit and his office and all the trappings of his wealth, he was just a man. A scared, uncertain man who was beginning to realize that everything he thought he knew about himself might be wrong. Daniel was already there when Marcus arrived, sitting in a booth near the back with a cup of black coffee in front of him. Marcus slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Daniel studied him for a long moment. "You look different." "I feel different." Marcus paused. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since last week about who I am, about who I've become. I didn't like what I found." A waitress appeared, a woman in her 60s with a kind face and tired eyes. Her name tag said Betty, and the way she carried herself suggested she had been working at this diner for longer than Marcus had been alive. "What can I get you, hun?" "Coffee, please. Black." She nodded and disappeared. "Your wife," Marcus said carefully. "I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't know, not that it excuses anything, but I am sorry." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Her name was Sarah. She was a nurse, pediatric oncology. She spent her whole career taking care of sick kids. When she got diagnosed, she said it was ironic. All those years surrounded by cancer, and it finally caught up with her. How long were you married? 18 years. We met right after I got out of the Navy. I was a mess, angry, lost, didn't know how to be a civilian anymore. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She saved my life." Marcus didn't know what to say. His own marriage had ended in bitterness and lawyers and fights over assets. He couldn't imagine what it would feel like to lose someone you actually loved. "I was married once," he offered. "It didn't work out. I wasn't around enough. Too focused on work, on making money, on proving that I was worth something." "Were you?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "Was I what?" "Worth something." Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. Maybe for the first time in his life. "I honestly don't know," he admitted. "I have money. I have success, at least I did. But I don't have friends. My ex-wife can barely stand to talk to me. My son thinks I'm a stranger. And I treat people like they're beneath me, because somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that I was better than everyone else." Daniel nodded slowly. "My wife used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they have. It's how they treat the people who have nothing. She sounds like she was very wise. She was the best person I ever knew." They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee arrived. Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm cup. "I want to make things right," Marcus said. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try. I want to be better." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of being the person I've been. Because that morning at the coffee shop you held up a mirror and I didn't like what I saw. Because my son is graduating next month and I want to be someone he can be proud of." Daniel leaned back in the booth. "You want to know what I think?" "Yes. I think you've spent your whole life climbing a ladder without ever asking where it leads. You've accumulated things, money, power, status, but you've never stopped to wonder if any of it actually matters." Marcus felt the truth of the words like a physical blow. "The worst moment of my life," Daniel continued, "was holding Sarah's hand while she took her last breath. But you know what? Even in that moment I knew that I had lived. I had loved someone completely, and she had loved me back. All the missions I ran, all the medals I earned, none of it meant anything compared to that." "I don't have that," Marcus whispered. "I don't have anything like that." "Then find it, before it's too late." They talked for 3 hours that day. Marcus told Daniel things he had never told anyone, about his father, a cold and distant man who measured worth in dollars and cents, about the pressure he had felt to succeed, to prove himself, to never show weakness, about the compromises he had made along the way, the people he had stepped on, the relationships he had sacrificed. Daniel listened without judgment. He shared stories of his own, about the Brotherhood of the SEALs, the bonds formed in combat, about the struggles of returning to civilian life, the nightmares and the anger and the long road back to something resembling normalcy, about Sarah, always about Sarah, and how she had been his anchor through it all. By the time they left Murphy's Diner, something had shifted between them. Not friendship exactly, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. "Thank you," Marcus said as they stood on the sidewalk, "for listening, for not just writing me off as a lost cause." "Everyone's fighting a battle," Daniel said, "even the ones who seem like they have everything." Marcus nodded. "I'd like to see you again, if you're willing. I think I could learn a lot from you." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and shook Marcus's hand. "Same time next week?" Marcus smiled. It felt strange on his face, like a muscle he hadn't used in years. "I'll be there." The weeks that followed were a transformation. Marcus started showing up at Murphy's Diner every Saturday at noon. He and Daniel would sit in the same booth, drink the same black coffee, and talk for hours. Sometimes about serious things, sometimes about nothing at all. Daniel taught Marcus about the things that mattered: loyalty, integrity, the importance of keeping your word. Marcus started making changes, small ones at first. He began saying please and thank you to his employees. He learned the names of the cleaning staff, the security guards, the people who had been invisible to him for years. He started leaving the office at a reasonable hour, eating dinner at his kitchen table instead of his desk, sleeping more than 4 hours a night. He started going for walks in the morning, something he hadn't done since he was a young man with dreams and ambition. He would walk along the lakefront, watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan, and he would think about all the years he had wasted chasing things that didn't matter. The changes didn't go unnoticed. "You seem different," his assistant Jennifer said one morning. She had worked for him for 8 years and had the battle scars to prove it. "Less tense. More human." "I'm working on it," Marcus admitted. "I know I haven't been easy to work for. That's putting it mildly. I'm sorry for everything. You've put up with a lot, and I never appreciated it." Jennifer stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Are you dying? Is this some kind of terminal diagnosis situation?" Marcus laughed. It felt good. "No, I'm just trying to be better." "It's long overdue." He called Ethan that night. The phone rang 5 times before his son answered. "Dad? Hey, kiddo, I know I don't have any right to ask, but I was hoping we could talk." There was a long silence. "About what?" "About everything. About why I haven't been around. About how sorry I am. About how much I want to fix things between us." Another silence. When Ethan spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "I've waited my whole life to hear you say that. I know, and I'm so sorry it took this long. I've been selfish and blind and focused on all the wrong things, but I want to change. I want to be the father you deserve. I don't know if I can trust that. You don't have to, not yet. Just give me a chance to prove it. Let me come to your graduation. Let me be there for you." The silence stretched so long that Marcus thought the call had dropped. Then Ethan spoke. "Okay, but this is your last chance, Dad. If you disappoint me again, we're done." "I understand. I won't let you down." After they hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness of his living room and cried. It was the first time he had cried in decades. He had forgotten how cathartic it could be. The graduation ceremony was held on a perfect spring day, the Stanford campus awash in sunshine and the optimism of youth. Marcus arrived early, dressed in a suit that was expensive but understated. Linda was already there, sitting in the reserved section. She looked surprised to see him. "You came?" she said. "I said I would." She studied his face, searching for the catch, the angle. "What's happened to you? You're different." "I met someone," Marcus said. "A man who showed me who I had become. I didn't like it, so I'm changing." Linda shook her head slowly. "I spent 15 years of my life trying to get you to change, 15 years of fighting and compromising and hoping. And now, after everything, you finally figured it out. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I put you through all of that. I don't want your apologies, Marcus. I've moved on. But Ethan deserves to have a real father. If you're actually willing to be that, then I'm glad you're here." Ethan graduated with honors. When his name was called, Marcus cheered louder than anyone. The look of surprise on his son's face was worth more than every penny Marcus had ever earned. After the ceremony, the 3 of them went to lunch. It was awkward at first, years of distance and disappointment creating an invisible wall between them. But slowly, tentatively, the wall began to crumble. Ethan talked about his plans for the future. He'd been accepted to a graduate program in environmental science, wanted to work on climate change solutions. Marcus listened, really listened, for the first time in his son's adult life. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said. "I know I haven't said it enough. I know I haven't shown it, but I am so incredibly proud of the man you've become." Ethan's eyes glistened. "That means a lot, Dad. More than you know." When they parted ways that afternoon, Ethan hugged Marcus. It was brief and awkward, the embrace of 2 people learning how to be close again, but it was real. "Don't screw this up," Ethan whispered. "I won't," Marcus promised. "Never again." Daniel's grief didn't disappear, but slowly it transformed. The raw, consuming anguish of the first weeks gave way to something more manageable, a persistent ache, always present but no longer overwhelming. Sarah was still the first thing he thought about when he woke up, and the last thing he thought about before he fell asleep. But the thoughts no longer paralyzed him. He started going through her things, a task he had avoided for months. Her clothes, her books, the little mementos she had collected over a lifetime. Each item was a memory, a fragment of the life they had shared. In her desk drawer, he found a letter addressed to him. It was dated 3 days before she died. "My dearest Daniel, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you're going through my things like I always told you to eventually do. I know you. You've probably been putting it off for months. That's okay. Grief doesn't have a timeline. I want you to know that the 18 years we had together were the best of my life. You showed me what it means to be truly loved. Every day with you was a gift, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. I know you're hurting. I know you feel lost without me. But I need you to promise me something. Don't let my death be the end of your story. You have so much left to give, so much love still inside you. Find a way to share it. Remember what I always told you. Everyone is fighting a battle you can't see. Be kind. Be patient. Be the man I know you are. I love you. I will always love you. And I'll be waiting for you on the other side. Forever yours, Sarah Daniel read the letter 3 times. By the end, he was sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. But there was something different about these tears. They weren't just grief. They were gratitude for the time they had shared, for the love that had been real and true and worth every moment of pain. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his wallet next to his heart. Then he picked up his phone and called Marcus. "I need to tell you about Sarah," he said. "Really tell you about who she was, what she meant to me, everything." "I'm listening," Marcus said. And for the next 3 hours, Daniel talked about meeting Sarah at a coffee shop of all places, about their first date, their first fight, the night he proposed, about the years of joy and the months of illness, about holding her hand at the end and telling her it was okay to go. Marcus listened without interruption, and when Daniel finished, he said the exact right thing. "She sounds incredible. I wish I could have known her." "She would have liked you," Daniel said. "The you that you're becoming anyway. She always believed people could change. I'm trying to prove her right." 6 months after the incident at the coffee shop, Marcus held a staff meeting at Webb Capital Management. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and every employee, from senior executives to interns, had been asked to attend. The mood was nervous. Staff meetings usually meant bad news, layoffs, policy changes, another round of belt-tightening. Marcus stood at the front of the room, looking out at the faces of the people who worked for him. Many of them had been with the company for years. He had never learned most of their names. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," Marcus began. The murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. "For the past 15 years, I've been the kind of boss that nobody deserves. I've been demanding, dismissive, and occasionally cruel. I've treated this company like a machine, and you like cogs in it. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." The room was silent. "Over the past 6 months, I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. I met someone who showed me what kind of person I had become, and I didn't like what I saw. So I've been making changes. And those changes are going to extend to how we operate here." He clicked a button, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind him. "Effective immediately, we're implementing a profit-sharing program. 10% of the company's annual profits will be distributed among all employees, weighted by tenure and position. We're also increasing starting salaries by 15%, adding 2 weeks of paid leave, and creating a fund for employee education and development." The murmurs grew louder. Several people looked like they might faint. "I know this is a lot to take in," Marcus continued. "And I know that one speech doesn't make up for years of bad behavior. But I want you all to know that I'm committed to doing better, to being better. And if I ever slip back into old habits, I want you to call me out on it." Someone in the back raised a hand. Marcus pointed to them. "Is this some kind of joke?" the employee asked. "Because if it is, it's really not funny." Marcus laughed. "I understand your skepticism. I've earned it. But no, this is not a joke. This is me trying to become someone I can be proud of." Jennifer, his assistant, stepped forward. "I've worked for Marcus for 8 years," she said to the room, "and I can tell you that whatever happened to him, it's real. He's been different for months, kinder, more patient, more human." She turned to Marcus. "I didn't think it was possible, but I actually enjoy coming to work now." The applause started somewhere in the middle of the room and spread outward until it filled the entire space. Marcus stood there, accepting it, and for once in his life, he felt like he might actually deserve it. After the meeting, Marcus returned to his office to find Daniel waiting for him. He was dressed in his usual jeans and flannel, looking wildly out of place amid the glass and chrome. "Jennifer let me in," Daniel said. "Told me about the meeting. That was a good thing you did." "It was the right thing. Long overdue." "How does it feel?" Marcus thought about it. "Terrifying, honestly. I just gave away millions of dollars. My financial advisors think I've lost my mind. But also right. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel like I'm actually living according to my values instead of just talking about them." Daniel smiled. It was still rare, those smiles, but they came more frequently now. "Sarah used to say that the only wealth that matters is the kind you can't take with you." She was right. Marcus paused. "I was thinking about starting a foundation in her name, something to support pediatric cancer research, families dealing with illness. Would you be okay with that?" Daniel's eyes widened. "You want to name a foundation after Sarah? She spent her career helping sick children, and according to you, she's the reason I'm standing here as a changed man. It seems only fitting." For a long moment, Daniel couldn't speak. Then he nodded, his jaw tight with emotion. She would have loved that. The Sarah Cole Foundation launched 6 weeks later. Marcus put in $10 million of his own money to start, and within a year it had grown to become one of the largest pediatric cancer charities in the Midwest. Daniel served on the board, sharing Sarah's story at fundraising events, putting a human face on the cause. The work gave Daniel purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, to engage with the world, to carry Sarah's legacy forward. The grief was still there, would probably always be there, but it no longer defined him. He started volunteering at the hospital where Sarah used to work. At first, it was painful, walking those same hallways where she had spent so many hours, but slowly it became healing. He would sit with the families of sick children, listening to their fears and hopes, sharing his own experience with loss. He became a fixture on the pediatric oncology ward, known as the quiet man, with the kind eyes, who always seemed to know exactly what to say. He and Marcus met for coffee every Saturday morning at Murphy's Diner. The staff knew them by name now, had their order ready before they even sat down. 2 black coffees, 2 slices of pie, and conversation that ranged from philosophy to sports to the latest foundation initiatives. "You know what I've realized?" Marcus said one morning. "I spent 50 years of my life trying to accumulate things. Money, power, status, and none of it made me happy. Not really. But this, sitting here with you, knowing that we're making a difference, this is what happiness feels like." "Took you long enough to figure that out," Daniel said. "Better late than never." That's what I keep telling myself. Marcus's relationship with Ethan continued to improve. They talked on the phone every week now, met for dinner whenever Ethan was in Chicago. The distance that had grown between them over the years was slowly closing, replaced by the tentative foundation of a real relationship. "I was thinking about what you said at my graduation," Ethan told him one evening, "about wanting to be the father I deserve. And I think you're getting there slowly, but you're getting there." It wasn't absolution, but it was progress. Linda remarried that fall to a high school teacher named Paul, who made her laugh and remembered her birthday without being reminded. Marcus sent them a wedding gift, a generous check, and a handwritten note wishing them well. "I never thought I'd say this," Linda told him afterward, "but I'm glad you found whatever it was you were looking for. The Marcus I divorced never would have sent that note. The Marcus you divorced never would have written it," Marcus agreed. "But he's gone now, or at least he's trying to be." 1 year after the coffee shop incident, Daniel visited Sarah's grave for the first time since the funeral. Marcus went with him. They stood in the quiet cemetery, the autumn leaves falling around them, and Daniel talked to his wife. He told her about the foundation, about the children they were helping, about the legacy she was leaving behind. He told her about Marcus, about the unlikely friendship that had grown from such an ugly encounter. He told her that he missed her every single day, but that he was learning how to live again. When he finished, Marcus placed a single white rose on the headstone. "I never met your wife," Marcus said quietly, "but she saved my life. The man I was before, the man who threw coffee on you in that shop, he was heading toward destruction, his own and everyone around him. Sarah showed you how to be kind, and you showed me. I owe her everything." They stood in silence for a while, two men bound by tragedy and transformation, paying tribute to a woman who had changed both their lives without ever knowing it. "Thank you," Daniel finally said. "For what?" "For not giving up, for reaching out, for being here." Marcus nodded. "Thank you for the same." They walked out of the cemetery together, leaving Sarah to rest in the gentle autumn sun. The present day found Marcus Webb sitting in his corner office, looking out at the Chicago skyline. 2 years had passed since the morning that changed everything. 2 years of growth, of change, of becoming someone he could be proud of. Webb Capital Management had stabilized under his reformed leadership. The staff, motivated by actual investment in their well-being, had achieved record performance. The oversight committee that had once been imposed on Marcus had been disbanded 6 months earlier, his authority restored. But Marcus barely noticed. The numbers mattered less to him now. What mattered was the foundation, the relationships, the life he was building outside these glass walls. His phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Dinner next Tuesday. I want you to meet someone." Marcus smiled. His son had been dating a young woman named Maya for 3 months now. The fact that Ethan wanted to introduce her to his father meant something. It meant trust was being rebuilt. Another buzz. This one from Daniel. "Board meeting tomorrow. Don't forget the quarterly report." Marcus typed back, "Never. See you there." He looked at the photo on his desk. It was new, added just a few weeks ago. It showed 4 people standing in front of the Sarah Cole Foundation headquarters on its opening day. Marcus, Daniel, Ethan. And Sarah, in a picture Daniel had provided, superimposed into the image by a talented graphic designer. She seemed to be smiling at all of them, blessing this improbable family that had formed in her absence. There was a knock on the door. Jennifer stuck her head in. "Your noon appointment is here." Marcus checked his calendar. A journalist from the Tribune, wanting to do a profile on the foundation's work. "Send them in." As he stood to greet his visitor, Marcus caught his reflection in the window. The man looking back at him was older than the one who had stormed into that coffee shop 2 years ago, greyer, more lined, but also calmer, kinder, more at peace. He thought about the hot coffee splashing across Daniel's chest, the rage in his own heart, the shame that had followed. He thought about all the choices he had made since then, all the ways he had tried to become better. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, times when the old Marcus threatened to resurface, but he had kept going, kept trying, kept believing that change was possible. And now, standing in his office with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, Marcus Webb knew that it was. The journalist was a young woman with sharp eyes and a notebook full of questions. "Mr. Webb, the foundation has raised over $50 million in 2 years. You've funded research that's led to breakthroughs in pediatric oncology treatment. You've helped hundreds of families with medical expenses. How does it feel to be responsible for all of that?" Marcus thought about the question. "I'm not responsible," he said. "Not alone. There are hundreds of people who work for the foundation, thousands of donors who believe in its mission. I'm just one piece of a much larger puzzle. But you started it. You provided the initial funding. You've been the public face of the organization." "That's true, but the real credit belongs to Sarah Cole, the woman the foundation is named after. She was a pediatric oncology nurse who spent her career helping sick children. She died 2 years ago, but her spirit lives on in everything we do. And Daniel Cole, her husband, I understand you two are close. Marcus smiled. Daniel is one of the best people I've ever known. When I met him, I was at the lowest point of my life. I didn't know it at the time, but I was lost, confused about what mattered, about who I wanted to be. Daniel showed me a different way. He taught me about integrity, about compassion, about the importance of treating every person with dignity and respect. The story of how you met is quite famous now. The coffee shop incident. Would you mind telling me about it in your own words? Marcus was quiet for a moment. He had told this story many times, but it never got easier. I was a different person then, arrogant, entitled. I genuinely believed that my wealth and status made me better than other people. I walked into that coffee shop and treated everyone there like they were beneath me. I threw hot coffee on a man I had never met, a man who was grieving the death of his wife, and I laughed about it. And then Daniel put me on the ground, physically. It took about 2 seconds. And as I lay there on the floor, with everyone watching, I realized how small I actually was. All my money, all my power, none of it meant anything in that moment. I was just a scared, pathetic man who had treated another human being terribly. That must have been humbling. It was devastating, but it was also necessary. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing back up. The interview lasted another hour. When it was over, Marcus walked the journalist to the elevator. "One last question," she said. "If you could go back and change what happened in that coffee shop, would you?" Marcus thought about it. "No," he said finally. "Not because what I did was right. It wasn't. But because everything that's happened since then, every change I've made, every relationship I've built, it all started in that moment. If I hadn't thrown that coffee, I might still be the man I was, and that man was slowly destroying himself." The journalist nodded. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Webb. Thank you for listening." After she left, Marcus returned to his office. He had one more meeting that day, but there was something he needed to do first. He picked up his phone and called Daniel. "Hey," Daniel answered. "How'd the interview go?" "Good, I think. She asked me if I would change what happened if I could." "What did you say?" "I said no, because everything good in my life right now started with that moment." There was a pause. "You know what Sarah would say about that?" "What?" "She'd say that grace often comes in ugly packages, that the worst moments of our lives are sometimes the ones that save us." Marcus felt his eyes sting. She was very wise. She really was. Another pause. "Hey, I was thinking, after the board meeting tomorrow, do you want to grab dinner? There's something I want to talk to you about." "Of course. What is it?" "I'll tell you tomorrow, but it's good news, really good news." They hung up, and Marcus stood by his window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over Chicago. 2 years ago, he had been a man without purpose, without connection, without hope. He had money and power, but no happiness. He had success, but no fulfillment. He had everything the world said should make him happy, and he was miserable. Now, standing in the same office, looking at the same view, everything was different. He had purpose in the foundation. He had connection with Daniel and Ethan and the new relationships he had built. He had hope for the future, not because of what he might accumulate, but because of who he was becoming. All because of a cup of hot coffee and a man with nothing left to lose. The board meeting the next day went smoothly. The foundation was exceeding all projections, making a real difference in the lives of families affected by pediatric cancer. Daniel presented the quarterly report with his usual quiet competence, and Marcus beamed with pride. Afterward, they walked to Murphy's Diner for dinner. It was a cold evening, the first real chill of autumn, and Marcus could see his breath in the air. "So, what's the good news?" he asked as they settled into their usual booth. Daniel took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what comes next, and I've decided to start volunteering at the hospital, the pediatric oncology ward. where Sarah used to work. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. Daniel, that's incredible. I was scared at first, scared that being there would be too painful. But I talked to some of Sarah's old colleagues, and they said the children could really use someone like me. Someone who understands what families are going through. They're right. You have a gift for connecting with people, for making them feel seen and heard. I learned that from you, actually. Marcus blinked. From me. From watching you change. From seeing you go from the man who threw coffee on me to someone who genuinely cares about others. It made me believe that transformation is possible, that people can become better versions of themselves. They sat in silence for a moment, two men who had found each other through adversity and built something meaningful from the wreckage. To Sarah, Marcus said, raising his coffee cup. To Sarah, Daniel agreed, raising his own. They clinked cups and drank. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, dusting the city in white. Inside Murphy's diner, two unlikely friends sat in their usual booth, talking and laughing and planning for the future. It wasn't the life either of them had imagined, but it was the life they had built together, and it was good. 3 years to the day after the coffee shop incident, the Sarah Cole Foundation hosted its annual gala. The event had grown from a modest gathering of a few dozen supporters to a black tie affair, attracting hundreds of Chicago's most influential citizens. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. He saw familiar faces everywhere. Jennifer, who had become the foundation's executive director, Ethan sitting with Maya at a table near the front. They had announced their engagement last month, and Marcus had cried tears of joy. And Daniel, sitting in the place of honor, wearing a suit that Sarah had bought him for their 10th anniversary. He wore it to every major event, a way of keeping her close. 3 years ago, Marcus began, I was the worst version of myself, arrogant, cruel, completely disconnected from what really matters in life. And then I met a man who changed everything. He looked at Daniel. Daniel Cole doesn't know this, but that morning at the coffee shop, I had just received news that my company was on the verge of collapse. My marriage had already ended. My son had stopped returning my calls. I was spiraling and I didn't even know it. When I threw that coffee on him, I was really throwing it at myself. At everything I had become and everything I had lost. The room was silent. Daniel had every right to hate me. I had humiliated him, assaulted him, mocked his grief. But instead of hating me, he gave me something I didn't deserve. He gave me grace. He gave me a second chance. And he introduced me to the memory of his wife, Sarah, whose compassion and wisdom have guided this foundation from the very beginning. Marcus felt his voice catching. Tonight, we celebrate everything we've accomplished together. The research we've funded, the families we've helped, the lives we've saved. But I want to remind everyone here that none of this would be possible without one simple act of forgiveness. Daniel Cole forgave me when he had no reason to, and that forgiveness changed both our lives forever. He stepped back from the podium and gestured to Daniel. Please join me in honoring the man who made all of this possible, Daniel Cole. The applause was thunderous. Daniel walked to the podium, his face flushed with emotion. I'm not much for speeches, he said. Sarah was always the eloquent one. But I want to say a few things. He looked out at the crowd. When my wife died, I thought my life was over. I didn't see the point in going on. Everything that had made life worth living was gone. And then I met Marcus Webb. A few people laughed. Daniel smiled. I know, the guy who threw coffee on me. But here's the thing. That moment, as horrible as it was, led to something beautiful. It led to this friendship. It led to this foundation. It led to Sarah's legacy living on in ways I never could have imagined. He paused. Sarah used to tell me that everyone is fighting a battle you can't see. She was right. Marcus was fighting a battle that day. And so was I. Our battles collided, and out of that collision something new was born. He turned to look at Marcus. I'm grateful for you, my friend. Grateful for your courage in facing your demons. Grateful for your generosity in funding this foundation. But most of all, I'm grateful for your friendship. You've helped me carry the weight of my grief. You've helped me find purpose again. You've helped me honor Sarah's memory in ways I never could have done alone. Now it was Daniel's voice that was catching. To Sarah, he said, raising his glass, my wife, my love, my guiding star, and to all of you who help keep her light shining. The room rose as one, glasses raised. To Sarah. After the gala, Marcus and Daniel sat on a bench outside the venue, watching the guests file out into the night. The air was warm, summer lingering into September, and the stars were bright overhead. Quite a night, Marcus said. Sarah would have loved it. She was there. I could feel her. Daniel nodded. I could too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. You know what I keep thinking about? Marcus finally said. All the people I hurt over the years. All the interactions like the one in the coffee shop. People I bullied and belittled and dismissed. I wonder how many of them were carrying burdens I couldn't see. How many of them went home and cried because of something I said or did. You can't change the past. I know. But I can make sure I don't repeat it. Every person I meet, every interaction I have, I try to remember that they're fighting their own battles. I try to treat them with the kindness I should have shown all along. That's all any of us can do. Marcus looked at his friend. Do you ever regret it? Forgiving me, I mean. Letting me into your life. Daniel thought about it. No, he said. Not for a second. You've helped me heal in ways I never thought possible. You've given me purpose when I had none. You've been a true friend when I needed one most. Even after everything? Especially after everything. Because you earned it. You did the work. You became someone worthy of friendship. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't try to hide them. Thank you, Daniel. For everything. Daniel put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Thank you for having the courage to change. They sat there until the last guest had left, and the event staff began packing up. Two men, bound by an unlikely chain of events, looking up at the stars and thinking about the woman who had brought them together. Sarah Cole had never met Marcus Webb. But her legacy, her wisdom, her compassion had transformed him from the worst version of himself into someone worthy of the life he was living. And that, more than any amount of money or success, was the truest measure of wealth. The end came peacefully, as endings should. 5 years after the coffee shop incident, Marcus Webb was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim. 6 months, maybe less. He took the news with a calm that surprised even himself. The old Marcus would have raged against the injustice, thrown money at experimental treatments, fought death with the same ferocity he had brought to business. But this Marcus, the man he had become, had a different response. He was grateful for the time he had been given, for the relationships he had rebuilt, for the foundation that would continue his work long after he was gone, for the friendship with Daniel that had given his final years meaning and purpose. He called Ethan first. Dad, what's wrong? I have some news. I wanted you to hear it from me. He told his son everything. The diagnosis, the prognosis, the plans he was putting in place. Ethan was silent for a long time. I'm coming to Chicago, he finally said. Maya and we're coming right now. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I wasted too many years being angry at you. I'm not wasting any more. They arrived that evening. Maya was 3 months pregnant with their first child, a girl. They were going to name her Sarah. Marcus held his son and cried. I'm so proud of you, he said. So proud of the man you've become. So proud of the family you're building. I learned from you, Ethan said. The new you, the real you. They spent 3 days together. Talking, laughing, sharing stories, making up for lost time. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something, a foundation for the future, even if Marcus wouldn't be there to see it. Daniel visited every day. He helped Marcus put his affairs in order, making sure the foundation would continue its work, making sure everyone would be taken care of. "I should be doing this for you," Daniel said one afternoon, "not the other way around." "Why?" "Because you're my friend, because you saved my life, because I owe you everything." Marcus shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. We saved each other. That's what friends do." They talked about death, about what might come after, about Sarah waiting on the other side. "Tell her thank you," Marcus said. "When you see her again, tell her thank you for everything." "I will," Daniel promised, "but you can tell her yourself. Someday." Marcus smiled. "I'd like that." The last conversation happened on a Tuesday morning. Marcus was weak, his body failing, but his mind was clear. Daniel sat beside his bed, holding his hand. "I've been thinking about that day in the coffee shop," Marcus said, "about how different things could have been." "Different how?" "If I had just walked away, if I had never called you, if I had stayed the man I was." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Marcus smiled. "Best decision I ever made." "Mine too." They sat in silence for a while. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for forgiving me a chance, for being my friend. Thank you for being worth it." Marcus Webb died 2 days later, surrounded by the people who loved him. Ethan was there, holding one hand. Daniel was holding the other. Maya stood in the corner, crying softly, her hand on her belly where baby Sarah was growing. It was a peaceful death, a good death, the death of a man who had lived fully and loved completely and made amends for the mistakes of his past. The funeral was standing room only. People came from all over the country to pay their respects. Colleagues, employees, foundation donors, the families of children who had been helped by the Sarah Cole Foundation. Even Linda came, sitting quietly in the back, her eyes filled with tears. Daniel gave the eulogy. 5 years ago, I met Marcus Webb on the worst day of my life. I had just buried my wife. I was lost, broken, barely holding on. And then this arrogant businessman threw hot coffee on me in a Starbucks. There were murmurs from the crowd. This wasn't how eulogies usually started. I could have hated him. Part of me did for a moment. But something told me to give him a chance, to see if there was more to him than the ugly mask he was wearing. And there was, so much more. He looked at the casket. Marcus Webb was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He hurt people. He spent decades building walls between himself and the rest of the world, but he had the courage to tear those walls down, to face his demons, to become someone better. Daniel wiped his eyes. In his final years, Marcus was the truest friend I've ever known. He helped me carry my grief. He helped me honor my wife's memory. He helped me find purpose when I had none. And he showed me that transformation is possible, that no matter how far you've fallen, you can always climb back up. He looked out at the crowd. That's the legacy Marcus Webb leaves behind. Not his money, not his success, but the proof that people can change, that forgiveness can transform both the forgiver and the forgiven, that grace can redeem even the worst of us. He turned back to the casket. "Goodbye, my friend. Say hello to Sarah for me. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll see her soon." The service ended with a simple prayer and a moment of silence. Then, one by one, the mourners filed out into the winter sunlight. Life went on, as it always does. The Sarah Cole Foundation continued its work under Jennifer's leadership. Ethan became a board member, carrying on his father's legacy. Baby Sarah was born in spring, healthy and beautiful, a new generation bringing hope to the future. Daniel kept visiting Murphy's Diner every Saturday morning. He sat in the same booth, drank the same black coffee, and thought about the two people who had changed his life forever. 1 year after Marcus's death, Daniel received a package in the mail. It was from the Foundation's lawyers, a final bequest that Marcus had arranged months before his death. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a letter. "Dear Daniel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But before I left, I wanted to make sure you had this. It's the journal I've been keeping for the past 5 years. Every conversation we had, every lesson you taught me, every memory of our friendship. I wanted you to have it, so you would always know how much you meant to me. You saved my life, Daniel, not literally, but in every way that matters. You showed me what it means to be a good person. You gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. You helped me become someone I could be proud of. I know you'll miss me. I hope you will anyway, but I don't want you to grieve too long. You've already done enough grieving for one lifetime. Instead, I want you to keep living, keep loving, keep honoring Sarah's memory, and now I hope mine as well. Everyone is fighting a battle you can't see. That's what Sarah used to say, right? Well, you helped me fight mine, and you won. We won. Thank you, my friend, for everything. With love and gratitude, Marcus Daniel read the letter 3 times. Then he opened the journal and began to read. Hours passed. The sun set and rose again. Daniel sat in his living room, lost in the pages of Marcus's words, reliving 5 years of friendship and growth and transformation. When he finished, he closed the journal and held it to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. "Both of you. Thank you." Outside, the first flowers of spring were pushing through the soil. The world was renewing itself, as it always did. Death giving way to life. Endings becoming beginnings. Daniel Cole stood up, tucked the journal under his arm, and walked out into the sunshine. He had promises to keep, people to help, a legacy to honor. And somewhere he knew Sarah and Marcus were watching, smiling, proud. The story wasn't over, it was just beginning a new chapter. 10 years after the coffee shop incident, Daniel Cole stood at the podium of the Sarah Cole Foundation's annual gala. He was 70 now, his hair completely grey, his face lined with age and experience. But his eyes were clear, his voice strong. "Tonight," he said, "we celebrate a decade of making a difference. 10 years of funding research, helping families, and honoring the memory of the 2 people who made all of this possible." Behind him, a screen showed photos. Sarah at the hospital, surrounded by the children she had cared for. Marcus at the first gala, beaming with pride. The 2 of them together in that superimposed photograph, the one Daniel had kept on his desk ever since. "Some of you have heard me tell this story before, but for those who haven't, I want to tell it one more time." He told them about Sarah, about her kindness, her compassion, her unwavering dedication to helping others. He told them about her illness, her death, the grief that had nearly destroyed him. Then he told them about Marcus, about the coffee shop, about the transformation that had followed, about the friendship that had given both their lives new meaning. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it all means," Daniel said. "Why things happened the way they did. Why I met Marcus on the worst day of my life. Why a moment of cruelty became the catalyst for so much good." He paused. "I used to believe that life was random, that things happened for no reason, that there was no pattern or purpose to any of it. But I don't believe that anymore." He looked out at the crowd. "I believe that we're all connected, that our actions ripple outward in ways we can't predict or understand, that the worst moments of our lives can become the seeds of something beautiful if we're brave enough to plant them." He thought about Sarah, about her final letter, about Marcus, about his transformation, about all the families they had helped, all the children they had saved. Marcus Webb threw hot coffee on me 10 years ago, and in that moment, everything changed. Not just for me, but for all of us. For every child who received treatment because of this foundation, for every family who received support when they needed it most, for every person who learned that transformation is possible, that forgiveness can heal, that love is stronger than hate. He raised his glass. "So tonight, I want to ask you to join me in a toast. To Sarah Cole, whose compassion inspired everything we do. To Marcus Webb, whose courage in facing his demons showed us that change is possible. And to all of you, who carry their legacy forward every single day." The room rose. To Sarah, to Marcus, to the power of grace. To Sarah, to Marcus, to grace. The glasses clinked. The applause swelled. And Daniel Cole stood at the podium, tears streaming down his face, filled with a gratitude so profound it defied words. Outside, the stars were bright. The same stars that had watched over that coffee shop 10 years ago. The same stars that had witnessed a moment of cruelty become a lifetime of redemption. And somewhere, Daniel knew, Sarah and Marcus were watching, smiling, proud, together.